Okay, this video is going to show us how to begin to assemble our slab box. We have cut out our 5 pieces and left them covered overnight under a plastic bag so that they can get leather hard. The one thing that's so important with slabs is you really want them to be fairly sturdy. If they're really soft and gooey, then it's easy for them to get all sort of ugly and lopsided. So we're going to start with our base. And the one thing about this particular template is these walls, they meet up where one of the other walls is actually overlapping, so that you can kind of see here how it sort of comes together by having one wall overlap. Now you're going to want to kind of place it on your base to start to kind of have a plan for how you're going to start to put this together. And it's very possible that you need to trim one of the walls for it to work properly. In this case, I'm seeing that this wall might work a little bit better if it were trimmed slightly so it can fit kind of within this area given. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a fettling knife and I'm going to use something that has a straight edge, and I'm going to trim it a little bit. Now remember, you could always cut more. Better to go in small amounts to determine size. I'm going to go a little bit more on that guy, and I'm going to trim it to a place where I feel like it fits the space provided a little bit better. So that is giving me a little bit better fit for those walls to match up. Now you can see there's a little bit of overage on the bottom. That is intentional. We are going to be able to use some of that clay to pull up the sides in a few minutes. We'll see that. And also we can trim it off if needed. Always better to have a little bit more down there so that we can kind of do fun stuff with it. So here I'm seeing I really like the way that this is sort of coming together. And like all slab projects, slipping and scoring is going to be essential for all of this to come together. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place this wall. I see that it's going to go right in the middle, and I'm going to leave a little bit of that overhang, and I could always trim it off later. I'm going to use one of these scoring tools and really make my life easier by roughing up the base of it really quickly. Similarly, on my base, I'm going to rough that up so that I could attach my wall pretty easily. I've got my slip here, and you could use any kind of tool to attach it, to put it on there. So I'm going to use a paintbrush and just get it on there. And a nice clean coating of nice smooth slip. And then I am going to attach it. And again, I planned it out that this particular wall was going to go right in the middle. So I got that guy on there. So now this wall, I had planned that it was going to go on the outside edge, so it was going to overlap. So what I need to do is I need to scratch the places where those walls are going to meet. In this case, this wall meets on this side, and on this wall, it meets on this inside edge. So as long as you're scratching up where it's going to meet up with it, you're going to be cooking. Now a little bit of slip, and again, put it together. You can use the outside edge of your base to give yourself some information to make sure that you're applying it really straight. As long as you have the same overage all the way down, then you know that that wall is straight. And give it a minute to kind of set up there. Okay? You can kind of move them around so that they look good. Okay, so now when it comes to this outside edge, you can do it as you go, or you can wait until all 4 walls are on there. It's totally up to you. There's no wrong way to do it. But the important thing here too is that we are going to want to put a soft coil everywhere where walls meet. So where a wall meets the base, and where each wall meets each other. So you're going to want to use some soft clay for that. I'm going to grab some soft clay. So a nice little coil will do the trick. Just roll it in your hands or on the table. And as long as I place that coil in the base, you can see how I got it down in there. I can use a modeling tool, I can use a paintbrush, anything to pull half that coil up the wall and then the other half into the base. So you can see how I'm pulling that half that coil up, half that coil down. A wet sponge will really help kind of smooth it out. Also a wet paintbrush works wonders for cleaning it up. I always like using a wet paintbrush. I feel like the bristles really help me clean it up. Sometimes even the back of the paintbrush you can kind of use to your advantage to really get that coil all in there. And that coil is going to really help stabilize that wall and fully connect it to the base. So you're going to want to do the same thing up the wall. And you could determine how big you want that coil to be. If you want really rounded edges on your slab box, you can make it, I just realized I didn't slip and score the base. It's going to make it hard for it to come together, right? So if you forget, just pull it off. Scratch it up. Scratch it up. That is essential. Slip it up and then reattach it, no problem. That would have been no good. Okay. So now that coil is in there and I can blend that coil all the way in just like the other wall. I'm going to fast forward to the outside. So let's assume I've got all my walls on. And we're going to see a couple things here. We're going to see that these two walls look a little yucky at the moment because they're not blended together. And so we want them to ultimately get scratched together. We also want to tackle the base a little bit and figure out where we want those walls to meet. So a trick on the base is that you actually can use this scoring tool and pull up that base clay into the wall. So you can see I'm scratching it up and it looks pretty ugly for a second. See how I've scratched it all up together. But then when you use the straight rib tool, I can pull up that clay, doing two things, blending it out and also using that base clay to really secure it on there. So you can see that that base clay is all secured on there, and then of course a wet sponge really helps clean it all up. So that's one way that you can use that base clay to help your box stay together. And similarly between walls, anywhere where you have walls that need to come together, that scoring tool can use that clay to scratch it into whatever's next to it. So I've got it all scratched up there. And then again, that rib tool, the straight rib tool, can help clean it all up. So you could see that corner is nice and scratched together. So I could do that on the same side here. If I feel like it's a little too much clay of an overhang, which this one might have a little bit, I could just simply take a fettling knife and trim it if I wanted to. Or again, you could use that scoring tool and just to continue to pull that clay up until it becomes a straight line. You could just use it to your advantage. Pull, pull, pull. You can see again, it's all scratched up there. But then once I come in with that rib tool, pull, 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 a little bit of pressure using my other hand as leverage, you could see how I've started to smooth out that base. right? So I would continue with coiling everywhere where wall meets themselves and scratching the base into the walls and then scratching each corner into the wall next to it. So you can determine how your walls meet together. You can trim them as needed to fit to your liking. If you want the box to be a little bit more narrow, you can trim the bottom. You could adjust the shape as needed, but I would encourage you to have a plan, know where you're going to want to put your walls, use that base shape as a guide for a perfect square, and have some fun with it. Coiling, slipping and scoring, smoothing, scratching. If you have a place that needs a little bit of filling because you pushed against it, don't be afraid to take a little ball of clay. For example, right in here I've got like a little kind of divot. I could just simply put a little bit of soft clay in there, press it in, blend it left, blend it right, and now I've kind of filled that gap a little bit. So if you have little gaps, don't be afraid to use some soft clay to fill it, and then of course a wet sponge is going to be a great tool for that. Right? And you could determine what shape you want the corners to be. If you like that they go to a sharp edge, you could use that rib tool. If you like that they would be rounded, just put some pressure and smooth it out. If you want these corners to be rounded, feel free to kind of round them out with your thumb and keep them that way. Or of course you could carve that shape back out again. So this is step one in beginning to assemble your square slab box.